Right, welcome to my full review of the BSA Scrambler 650. Now, as a Gold Star owner, I've had the Gold Star for 2 years, so I'm going to make some direct comparison between this bike and the Gold Star. But I have done 298.5 miles on the bike, which gives me a little bit more of an understanding of the ins and the outs, the quirks and the intricacies of this bike. Obviously, it's not as good as an owner's review, so if you want the full ownership experience, you're going to have to wait for this bike to become a little bit older in the market, and then there'll be people out there who've actually owned it and have put up videos on YouTube. However, at the moment, a high mileage test ride of the bike or test experience is sort of like the best option we've got. So let me go into it. Scrambler style motorcycle. We will say that these are inherently compromised compared to a road bike and an off-road bike. The reason being is that they're a little bit taller, and they've got a bigger front wheel, and they've got 50-50 or 80-20 tyres, which compromises them a little bit on the road. But then when you take them off-road, they haven't quite got the suspension travel. They have got extra weight, and the weight's usually up a little bit high. Plus, they look quite nice. If you drop them, you end up doing a lot of damage. That said, there is definitely a market for scramblers. People absolutely adore them. And it's the style, and it's the ability to go on kind of terrain to this. You can't see that because that's out of focus, but it's kind of like rocky, small rocks, a little bit of mud, bit of a gravel track, fire road, that kind of thing. Everybody's making scramblers. You've got Royal Enfield Bear, Moto Morini SCR, you've got the Fantic Caballero 700, and the Triumph Scrambler 400X. That's a smaller displacement, not in the 650, 700 class like the ones I previously mentioned, but it's still a scrambler. And of course the BSA Scrambler 650 with its 45 horsepower, single cylinder, so it's more leaning towards torque than outright power. They say that this bike is based on the Gold Star 650, but it's very, very different in its feel to the Gold Star 650. I think it's more similar to the Bantam 350 than it is the Gold Star 650 in the way it rides. Reason being is when you're on a Gold Star, your bars are sort of like here and you're bolt upright. I mean, look, I'm still able to easily reach the floor with a bend in the knee, so that's a good point for this type of scrambler, but it's the riding position on the Gold Star is here, whereas on the Scrambler it's here. Let's do that side so you can see. So I don't have a upright back, whereas on the Gold Star you do. So that's one of the differences. The other difference is the bars are a lot wider. So you're kind of like throwing the bike around and using the leverage of the bars to ride it a bit more aggressively. So you've got more aggressive lean, but also wider bars to allow you to more leverage to maneuver the bike. You've also got a 19-inch front wheel, which in theory would be worse for road holding compared to the Gold Star's 18-inch front wheel, and the tyre choice as well. The other thing which is very different for the Gold Star is, whilst on the same engine, when you're going to 60, 70 miles an hour, like a sustained cruise,
70 miles an hour is actually quite unpleasant. Just going to go up to an indicated 72 to pass these trucks, but I've got vibrations in the pegs and in the seats at 71 mile an hour indicated, so that's not ideal. It'll probably do 90, maybe even 100, but I don't think it'll feel very good doing it, because you're at 6,000 RPM at 66, 67 indicated.
You're at 6,000 RPM, which is a little bit annoying. So really, if you buy this bike, you kind of have to know what you want out of the motorcycle, because on a B road blast, it's so much fun. As I said in the first ride, it's like a big Bantam. You just throwing it around, it just loves to be revved. Totally different characters to the Gold Star, which is amazing really, considering they've got the same engine, same number of gears, but it's just the character is night and day, which is good. Overall, I love the fact it's a single cylinder. I think it competes really well with the other scramblers out there. Now, bear in mind that I'm a BSA fanboy, so perhaps take this with a pinch of salt, but I would have this bike over the Royal Enfield Bear. If you're a Royal Enfield fan, you might have the Bear over this bike. The other bikes in the category, like the Moto Morini, which is also a 650, it's probably not competition for either of these bikes, the Bear or the BSA Scrambler. It hunts a little bit at idle. Perhaps this ECU is still learning. I was told it's a self-learning ECU, but just seeing that those revs go up and down like that, I just wish that bikes these days would idle smoothly. But with this Euro 5.5, everybody is trying to keep their bike in this absolute tiny window of it's still running, but it's not having any excess unburnt fuel coming out of the exhaust. And then it hunts a little bit, just trying to find that point. And at one point, it actually cut out. It only happened once, and it's when the bike is stationary. It's not a problem when you're riding the bike, but it just shows how fine that like Euro 5.5 control has to be. One of the good points I talked about, the suspension is actually quite soft, which I like. Why make scramblers all the time that have rock hard suspension? It's just like a way to get good road holding without investing a lot in premium suspension components. You just make the springs stiff. I actually like the fact that the BSA has got quite a lot of give, I would say in the front and the rear, compared to the other scramblers, notably the Bear and all Royal Enfield 650s seem to have stiff springs at the rear, but the Scrambler doesn't. And it just means it's fun to take on gravel and on rocks and stuff like that. It's not going to shake your fillings out. Whereas if you were to take it on the road, it doesn't really suffer for having softer rear suspension for the first 0 to 80% of your riding. When you then crank it up a little bit, you do find that the back pogos a little bit, which is kind of similar to the Gold Star, but it's not as bad as the Gold Star by far. It's much improved rear suspension compared to the Gold Star. That could also be very underdamped. Whereas this, you have to really press on to kind of find the limit of it, I find. We'll also talk about the tyres. I really like Pirelli Scorpion STRs. I really don't like Pirelli Phantom Super Comps. I think they're crap, which is a debatable point, but that's my opinion. Pirelli, they're a company of two halves because the STRs are really good. And the fact that blocks almost make up a continuous surface on the lean area of the tyre means that when you kind of throw this bike into the bends, you've got no issues with the tyre. Same with the front wheel being 19, doesn't really affect, to me, how flickable it is on the road. I still think you can have a lot of fun with it. The tyre size is excellent, and it's better than the Gold Star because a 17 and a 19 has an almost infinite number of options for off-road, even for road, for sport touring tyres that are fitted to adventure style bikes with a 19-inch front. That'll apply here. And if you wanted to go the other way, which I think more people would, with proper off-road tyres, then you also have the option as well. So it's really good to have those tyre sizes. Brakes. Now, there's a little kind of trend in brakes where front brakes on many a low budget bike are phenomenally good. You just kind of have to squeeze the brake, it kind of comes on smoothly and you just instantly decelerate it. Rear brake, again, following the trend, kind of not so good. You mainly use that for trail braking through corners. You could also use the rear and then reset the position of the bike before you hammered the front if you were really kind of thinking technically about riding. But for day-to-day use, the front brake is extremely potent. Again, I said this in the first video, doesn't seem to matter whether you have Brembo or Nissin or J-Joan or whatever brake it is, it doesn't actually determine the braking power. You could have Nissin brakes that are really potent. I suspect it probably depends more on the pads that you have than the actual brakes. Let's talk about the overall fit and finish. I'd be happy with it. I can't find anything like untoward poking around that looks badly finished or cheap or plasticky. It all looks quite good to me. Up top here, the rider's view I think is fine. I would probably accessorize it a little bit with perhaps hand guards and a little foam insert there to go over the cross brace. there's bits and bobs you could do to make it look a little bit more special, but that's all quite inexpensive. If you become an owner of this bike, you could do all that good stuff. Right, fuel economy. I've actually tested it for once. So it does about 130 miles to a tank, and I recall, I think it was 132 miles, and then I refilled the tank up to the brim again. I put 9.96 litres in. So what I'll do is I'll put on the screen the exact calculation, and I've got the fuel light on again, and let me just do trip A, and it's after about 117 miles. So you're looking at about 120, 125 before the fuel light comes on. Should you buy this bike or a Gold Star or a Bantam? So obviously Bantam for the absolute bargain of the century, 3.5 grand. This bike is like a big brute of a Bantam, I think. You throw it around, it's so much fun to ride. I think I'll say that about BSA. They've actually nailed what makes a bike fun to ride, which is quite a good achievement for such a new company to the market. The Gold Star is your kind of like sensible, all your chrome, polishing, nice accessories, summer Sundays to the pub. This is the kind of brute that loves to be thrashed. Very, very different. I would probably test ride both. Only thing is, this gives away £1,000 cost increase to the Gold Star. So Gold Stars at the moment, I think are 4,999 at some dealers, but they are going to go back up. Something that people usually miss when they do a bike review is the kind of big fluff that goes all around the motorcycle. The dealer support and the reliability and the servicing and that kind of stuff. Servicing on all these entry-level bikes isn't 10,000 miles per service, usually about 3,500 miles or 5,000 kilometers per service. The good thing is you can do the servicing yourself, which I'm sure they want you to go to the dealer, but it is possible. They're quite simple engines, there's no fairings to remove. The oil filter on this is behind the cover. As long as you're comfortable with just removing the cover and then pulling a kind of housing out, and then you'll access the filter. The sump plug is down below. Again, easy to access, you have to take off a little sump guard. You could do a couple of services within the warranty at the dealer and then start servicing it yourself. And I think that'll be fine. You know, this is kind of like you can look after yourself. The other fluff around it is dealer support within the warranty period. BSA, to be fair to them, have gone from 0 dealers to like 45 dealers. I don't know what the exact number is now, but they've got surprising amount of dealers considering these bikes have only been set up since 2021, I think they were announced. At least it was revealed, the Gold Star, in 2021. So when we come to warranty claims, BSA have historically been really good at honouring warranty claims without question. And that was really important because they were a new brand. They kind of needed to cement a good reputation, particularly with the early days of the Gold Star. Because they've got that mindset now, it means if you buy a Bantam or a Scrambler and something does go wrong with it, they're going to honour it, I think, without questioning. So it's for me, it'd be reassuring to have BSA support. Some of you might differ, some of you might disagree, but that's what I actually think about it. I think BSA support is something to be valued. Better go now because there's a tractor coming. The other thing to mention, of course, is the price, which again is unconfirmed at this point. I think if BSA come in at 5.5, possibly 5.7, something like that, then they'll do all right. But if they come in at high 6s, trying to compete with the Bear directly, I just don't think it's going to pull people over the line. I think they've got to price the bike correctly. Think of the Triumph Scrambler and Speed 400. Okay, they were 400s, but they're still single-cylinder liquid-cooled bikes designed from the scratch up, manufactured in India. Those bikes were 5 grand and 5,500 or 5,600 respectively. They've crept up a bit since then, but that was the low price point that got people over the line. And price is heavily involved with marketing, because if there's a bike that comes out at the right price point, people start thinking about it, talking about it, it becomes a feasible possibility for them. The other point to mention is reliability issues. BSA has all the I's dotted and T's crossed. This bike has to come right from the start. Engine management, all the fueling and everything has to be perfect. Just make sure that bike comes into people's hands, all singing, all dancing, with no ongoing gremlins or concerns. Finally, the BSA Scrambler is actually kind of a pre-production bike. It's presented almost finished, but they're still considering some minor changes to it, like the TFT, for example, or instrument cluster. I think that's good in a way, because some people want the dual analog clocks from the Gold Star put across to the Scrambler, and a lot of people don't like LCD on a retro bike. So in certain circumstances, it's good to have a little bit of flexibility in the build, get customer feedback.